All right, today we're putting on our detective hats to solve a really common automotive mystery. We're going to crack the code on the Nissan P1111 error and turn that confusing number into a clear plan of action. So let's get this investigation started. So there it is, that glowing, dreaded check engine light on your dashboard. You run a scan and it spits out this cryptic code, P1111. It feels like a clue, but what on earth does it mean? Don't worry, that's exactly what we're here to figure out. Together. The first step in any investigation is to understand the evidence you've got. And in this case, our main clue is the code itself. So what is P1111 really trying to tell us? Okay, so officially, P1111 stands for Intake Valve Timing Control Circuit Malfunction. Yeah, I know, that is a mouthful, but believe it or not, it's a super specific message from your car's main computer, and it tells us exactly where we need to start looking for the problem. Let's just boil that down. Think of your car's powertrain control module, or PCM, as the engine's brain. This brain has noticed something weird, an unexpected voltage reading, somewhere in a very specific electrical circuit. So here's the key takeaway. P1111 is an electrical fault, not a mechanical one. That's a huge clue right there. Right, so to understand the crime, we've got to understand the crime scene. What exactly is this intake valve timing control system? And, what's its job? To put it simply, this system is kind of like your engine's lungs. It controls the timing of when the intake valves open and close to let air into the cylinders. By adjusting that timing on the fly, it makes sure the engine is running as smoothly and efficiently as possible. That means better performance and better fuel economy for you. And this is where the PCM, that engine's brain we talked about, comes in. It's constantly watching over all these systems. The moment it saw that strange voltage in the valve timing circuit, it did its job. It threw up the P1111 flag to make sure you'd pay attention. All right, every good detective story needs a lineup of suspects, right? We know we've got an electrical fault in the valve timing circuit. The big question is, who's the culprit? And here is our lineup. The whole investigation is going to focus on 4 main suspects. First, we've got wiring issues, things like an open or shorted circuit. Then we have a faulty solenoid, which is basically the switch that controls the timing. Honestly, these are your most common offenders. And finally, in some pretty rare cases, the brain itself, the PCM, could be the issue. Now it's time to interrogate our suspects, one by one. We're going to follow the evidence, and we'll start with the most likely culprits first. So, our first 2 suspects are wiring faults, an open circuit and a shorted circuit. An open circuit, think of it like a washed-out bridge on a highway. The electricity just can't get where it needs to go. A short circuit, on the other hand, is like a bad shortcut that causes a massive traffic jam, with electricity going somewhere it absolutely shouldn't. So your first step is a simple visual inspection. Just look at the wiring harness that connects to the intake valve timing control solenoid. Are there any frayed wires, cracked insulation, maybe some dirty, corroded connectors? You would be amazed how often the culprit is just sitting there in plain sight, especially with all the heat and vibration happening in an engine bay. But what if you check the wiring and everything looks, well, perfect? The bridge isn't washed out, there are no bad shortcuts. Now, if you're a bit more advanced, you might break out a multimeter here, but if you're just doing a visual check, where does our investigation go next? Well, if the pathway for the electricity, the wiring, is clear, then our investigation has to turn to the destination itself, the intake valve timing control solenoid. This little part can fail internally, and that can cause the exact voltage problem that the PCM picked up on. And finally, we get to our absolute last resort. If the wiring is good, and you've maybe even tried a new solenoid, and that didn't fix it, then you might, and I mean might, have a problem with the engine's brain, the PCM. This is really the least likely scenario, but it's the final suspect we have to consider after everyone else has been cleared. So, we have our suspects, and we've got a clear plan for our investigation. But here's the thing. This is not a case you can just leave unsolved. Why is it so important to track down the culprit quickly? I mean, what happens if you just ignore that light? And this, right here, is probably the most critical takeaway from this entire investigation. Leaving a P1111 code unresolved is just not an option. The system it's warning you about is absolutely essential for your engine to work properly. And ignoring it, well, that can lead to some really serious consequences. Think of it this way. That check engine light is your first, most important clue. Ignoring it isn't going to make the problem vanish. It just lets a small electrical issue potentially snowball into much bigger and way more expensive engine trouble down the road. So, the case is officially in your hands. Is it a simple fix in the wiring, or is there a key component that's crying out for help? That P1111 code isn't just a problem, it's the start of your investigation. Good luck.